who will present on JS Talks. And Radoslav Stankov is one of the most popular speakers in Bulgaria, and not only in Bulgaria, but in the whole region. He is focused on several different technologies, almost everything around JavaScript, React.js. He is leading the user group, GraphQL, and many other things. So welcome, Rado.
Hey, everybody, how's it going?
I would like to ask you several things which will be interesting for attendees. This year, JS Talks will be virtual event, so probably we will have also attendees worldwide from different locations. Probably most of local people know about you, but in any case, there will be something new, something interesting, which will be very useful for our community and for worldwide JavaScript community. So probably it's good to start with one question related to how actually you start developing software, how it happened.
Oh man, so this happened in 2002 when I was 15, kind of by accident. I joined like a web agency when I was like 15. I actually didn't know this was job in the first 2 years. I was just making stuff for the fun of it. And I was very surprised that actually people get paid to do that because I would just like making stuff with code, and I really enjoyed the projects I worked there. And yeah, this is basically how it happened. Like I was just kind of dropped in and never looked back afterwards.
Interesting. And what was the most interesting um, content which you really had in your experience? I mean, most interesting projects, more interesting challenges which you met actually.
Yeah, I mean, one challenge I remember even when in my early career was like just combining different technologies, like needing to combine front end, back end services and external services. Like this is always for me the biggest challenge is mostly like arranging systems. Like for example, one of the latest projects I worked on, which was just a prototype and it actually didn't see the light of day just because the product didn't make sense, was involving an iOS app with different video streams, putting it into like cloud infrastructure, being canalized, and then trying to make like a fast feed TikTok style working. And this involved like 7 different technologies, 4 different programming languages. And for me, this is always like the most interesting when I can combine front end, back end, product, and again, infrastructure to make something.
It is quite difficult because you need to know good enough many different technologies and how these technologies actually can be used together.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing I noticed, because again, I'm full stack from day one pretty much, because a lot of situations I was the only one developer around, so I had to be, was that if you look at what good software is, like building and designing good software, like the rules for building good stuff is the same for the front end, for the back end, for the infrastructure, especially the last couple of years. For example, infrastructure as a code is like a new movement in the DevOps side of things, where they actually think about the infrastructure as, okay, I just write commands and code and the code builds my infra for me. And a lot of the good patterns there are very good patterns for the programming. Like for example, my favorite example of like combining different technologies, the proxy pattern. Like if we say proxy to a front-end developer, they will know what it means. If they tell it for a back-end person, they'll know what they mean. If you give it to a DevOps, you have this term everywhere. It kind of is the same thing, and it kind of solves similar issues. So if you are open enough to learn again the details of the different front end, back end, and infra, actually a good coder, like somebody who knows how to build code and think about in terms of system, not just like, okay, I just need to do my task and I'm done. But if they think about in terms of system, they can be successful combining all those things.
And despite that, you have so many interesting cases and so rich experience. What will be the next challenge for you? Something which you really want to meet and to actually solve it?
Yeah, like one of the challenges for me in the next basically 6, 7, 8 months is I'm moving more into management and mentoring and more architecture role than execution role. And this is a challenge. I was trying to postpone for the last couple of years, but it's going to that phase now where I noticed that I'm more impactful helping others design the systems and not me building the systems. So this is kind of like my next big frontier and challenge is getting out of like, okay, I need to design it, architect it, and build it to actually help other people build, execute, and think about it.
Yes, it will be really something very interesting, and I believe that you have a great success. And if we go back to the community, how it happens that you started to contribute for the community? I know that you are founder of VarnaConf and React NotaConf, but how you started?
Yeah, so the reason I started was when I was studying in Varna, there were zero IT events. So this was 2006, 2010. I was at university in Varna, and back then I didn't have enough money to go to all the events I was hearing outside of Bulgaria. Like, and in Bulgaria, actually, there wasn't a lot of community action. There wasn't enough events in that period of time. And for me, it was very important to learn from other people, because that's, I think, the best way to share the knowledge is to go to events, to talk with people with similar interests, to see the different cases. It's better to learn from others' mistakes than you make them yourself. So I really wanted to be going to events. So every time I had opportunity, I was going to conferences and events. And in Varna, I got involved first in something called Varna Lab, which was a hackerspace, where okay, everybody who is interested in technologies can come, and Varna Lab still around. So I was one of the first people there, and we had those mini events. And this is the first place I learned to give presentations, to talk to people, and so on. And when I come back to Sofia and starting joining the Sofia community, which was a lot more developed back then, I noticed that, okay, in Varna, nothing is happening. So the next time I went to vacation, I said, okay, let's do a small conference. And after that, again, it spiraled up. Like VarnaConf started, then the IT tour, VarnaConf started, and VarnaConf is now part of the IT tour. And again, this is why I started the React group afterwards, because I wanted to gather everybody who knows about React, because it was quite new back then, so we can learn together. And VarnaConf started like a bigger meetup. Actually, React not a conf. So yeah, that's basically just slowly dropping in.
And what is the most useful for you? What you see in the community? Why you contribute for this community in general?
Yeah, so two reasons. Like the first reason for me, like sharing knowledge actually is something which makes my knowledge better. Every time I have to give a presentation on something, write a blog post or explain something, that means I actually have to understand it. So this actually, me preparing for a talk actually makes me a lot better in the subject I'm going to talk about. The second one is I want to work with intelligent people. I want to talk with people who are inspiring. I want to work with people who are very interested. And the best way to have such people is to help them become that. And I see a lot of people who are coming to the events and they're very excited. They want to learn. And this also gives me inspiration, because I always remember what was it when I was like in Varna, when I was teaching, and there was like zero events. Like I was very interested in back then Ruby on Rails, and I didn't know anybody who was interested in this technology around me. I only knew like people outside, and I was too shy to talk with like people on Twitter back then, and so on and so forth. And I want to help people not feel like that. Like everybody who is interested in a technology should have a place where they can meet people who are interested in that, learn with them, and collaborate. And I think this would be better for everybody.
What is your impression from Jazz Talks? We will have this conference 6 year in a row already, and this year will be the first one when we will have a virtual conference. What you
Yeah.
think, like impressions you are from the first speakers you contributed, helping the community around this conference every year from the beginning?
Yeah, I really like the GS Talks. Like, it's one of my favorite conferences, and it's all every year. I'm very surprised how many people are coming. Like, it's really massive to see it, like 5 tracks and stuff like that. I'm a bit sad that we cannot have events in person and feel the energy of the room. But I think having it remote events is actually opening the door even wider for people to come. Because again, I'm thinking for people who are like when I was 15, for example, when I started working, uh, there were no online events. Like streaming video wasn't a thing when I was starting to work. Like I don't think YouTube was existed back then. Like for example, so we forget that there is like a big group of people who learn by those events, and those people are like 15, 12, like still kids who cannot travel alone. So I think it's a great opportunity to have an event which expands it outside of like just Sofia, but Bulgaria and even the whole Balkans.
And probably it's interesting also to say a little bit more about your topic at Jazz Talks this year. What you will talk about and what will be the important for people who attend conference.
Yeah, so my talk this year would be about using React and Electron to make desktop apps. And again, it's very similar to what we discussed in the beginning. I really like combining 5 technologies in order to make a good product. And for me, again, this is something I learned this year because during the lockdown, I had so much of time to experiment and play around with things. And my talk is going to share all the things I wanted to know, which could save me like at least 1 or 2 months of work on my side projects. And the idea here is again, technology enabling people to make products they think of. Because if we have to, because now, right now, we have so many platforms and so many things to build, and JavaScript is one of the glue which can glue a lot of different technologies and help you go to market. Like before, if you needed a desktop app, you have to choose, do I need a Mac app? Do I need like a Windows app? Do I need a Linux app? And you have to make this choice. And one thing with Electron is you don't need to make this choice, at least in the beginning, maybe later. But if we see from applications like Slack, Teams, Visual Studio Code, Atom, and a lot more, they still haven't like make half native. But this is an interesting technology, and it's also like the sub topic of it is like, in order to build something successful nowadays, you have to combine technologies. You cannot just, okay, I just have this one thing and I build it.
Yeah, it will be a very interesting topic, and I suppose that attendees will enjoy this session. So thank you very much for this Q&A session, and hope to see you soon on the next Q&A sessions and of course at Jazz Talks.
Thanks for having me. Bye bye.